There was a lot of hype about Luke Littler before the World Championship, but were you surprised by how good he was on the big stage at the age of 16?
Not at all. When you consider what he's done this year, in every tour he's played in, think of the WDF. He's won the British Classic, he's won the British Open. If they'd held more tournaments that weekend, he probably would have won those as well. He's got so much energy for a young man, obviously. He's been to the Super Series, he's won 2 consecutive titles there. It was almost surprising that he didn't win the third. He was eliminated by Sebastian Białowieski in a weekly semi-final. But to see him take that form onto the Alexandra Palace stage, whereas it might be surprising for some people, it isn't for us, because if you think about how comfortable he looked in his Lakeside debut 18 months ago, and what he's done since then to grow in 18 months to the player he is now, he's putting in big numbers in this tournament and impressive displays. But we're talking about a talent that is just very comfortable playing darts under the lights. That's pretty much it in a nutshell.
And does it take a unique kind of character to be comfortable in front of that crowd making that amount of noise in favour of him? It's not quiet, sleepy afternoon sessions. It's raucous, and he's there throwing as if it's just his living room.
I think what people need to understand about Luke is that this kind of exposure to playing in front of different crowds and noises is very normal for him. When people were coming through 15, 20 years ago, and even before that, they were very nervous to grace the stage and wouldn't necessarily take their best darts on stage immediately. It would take them time to get used to playing in front of big crowds. It took me a bit of time to get used to playing in front of crowds, and it took me years as a county player for Northumberland to feel comfortable playing in front of 100 or 200. Never mind 3,500 or more than that. But the exposure he's had to playing in front of different audiences at a very young age, the brain is very malleable at that young age, and it means that he gets used to something quicker at that age than we would maybe in our mid-20s. And I think the fact that he doesn't feel a great deal of nerves going onto that stage is testament to the kind of exposure he's had to different tournaments, even at such a young age like he's got.
A lot of comparisons are being made with, is he going to be a future Phil Taylor? Now, what I'm interested in is, obviously he's been playing the game since he was a tiny child. Has he just reached a level very fast, or do we expect him to do some silly things never seen before, like 130 averages on a regular basis, or will he just hit a ceiling like everybody does? He just does it earlier.
I think there is a ceiling of performance within darts that a lot of people are attaining. Everybody wants to have that 120 plus average game, and not many people attain that. But in short format matches and best of 11, it's going to be something that Luke's going to have to get used to over the next 2 years minimum, because he's got a tour card now. But he has attained a world-class level a lot quicker than others. And this is something that Michael van Gerwen did when he was younger, and other players have done so as well. But if he was to maintain that excellent level over the next few years, he would win a lot of titles and create his own little slice of history. It's very easy for people to say that he could be the next Phil Taylor. We're never going to get another Phil Taylor. Let's just make peace with that. No one's going to win 16 world titles, not even Littler, because there's just too much competition. Like I've just mentioned, he won 2 Super Series titles and he was beaten by Poland's, number 3 or 4. So these defeats are more likely now than when Phil was racking up titles 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years in a row. So I want him to be the first Luke Littler, and I want him to have the freedom to do what he wants over the next 5 to 10, 15 years. And is he going to be the next Van Gerwen? No, he's not going to be anything like Michael. He's going to be the next Luke Littler, which is very exciting, because he could bring a different brand of darts to the next generation, which we needed when Phil retired here 7 years ago. Michael took the mantle just before that and has run with it since then, and other people have helped him. But with Michael still searching for more titles, and he will over the next few years, we are maybe finding a period now where some players are troubling Van Gerwen more, and the likes of Littler and Van Veen and others coming through, and Josh Rock, maybe they can just take some of the pressure away from the Van Gerwens and that, and just make sure that the next generation is very well looked after, which it seems to be the case, which is great.
talking about being looked after, we've heard Gary Anderson complain about the media's attention on him, which I guess is natural given how good he is. It's impossible for the media to come here and let him fly under the radar, because the media need stories. They want to sell their newspapers and websites to the public who have also been excited by him. But what does Gary Anderson really mean, do you think?
I know exactly what Gary means, and he makes an incredibly important point. I'm going to go back a little bit in time, because during COVID we started a coaching course with the Junior Darts Corporation, and it's very appropriate because Luke Littler is the current 2-time junior world champion with the JDC, and he won't have a third because he's going to be too old. We've talked a lot about him being too young for things, but now he's going to be too old for that. But going through that course, we went through some training about safeguarding. Luke is still a child. He's under 18. And what we have to do is we have to look after these young players who are under 18, and we also need to look after the players when they go post 18 as well. So what Gary's trying to say is that the media may be going after the big story, but we must do that in a responsible manner. Otherwise, there will be mistakes made, whether it's from the journalists, whether it's from Team Littler. That's up for speculation. Things have happened. People have said that things shouldn't have happened in retrospect, whereas Gary has been somewhat lambasted by some people for making a very aggressive point. I don't think it's aggressive at all. I think what he's trying to say is, as a father and as someone who is an advocate, a senior and a vintage player, he's trying to look after the future of the game, but more importantly, trying to look after Luke Littler as a 16-year-old boy. And that's the important thing. He's got a young boy, and I'm sure that if Luke was his boy, that he wouldn't have been in that position over the last few days with so much media knocking on his door. Now, if that was your 16-year-old boy, would you allow the media to knock on your door and start writing stories without clearance from certain people like the PDC and that kind of thing? Safeguarding is hugely important for Luke's future, his immediate future. Gary's right. Let him go and play darts, and in the meantime, let the stories write themselves. Let him do his press conferences. Let him do his one-to-ones with established networks and websites and things like that. Beyond that, leave him be. Just let him practice. Let him be a kid.
And lastly, the Premier League. If he was to win the world title, he has to be in it.
Yes, he does. And a lot of people talking backstage, speculating as to whether it's possible. If Littler is allowed in this tournament, he can be in the Premier League. I don't see the problem with that. And the media bombshell around him would obviously heighten if he's world champion and if he's in the Premier League as well. I go back to words said back in 2017, actually, at the back end of the year. Actually, on this day in 2017, when Rob Cross beat Michael van Gerwen in the semi-finals and Phil Taylor beat Jamie Lewis. I remember somebody saying, Taylor's retiring in 2 days. What if he wins the tournament and the world champion is not in the Premier League? I've remembered that line because when this situation came up, if Littler is not allowed to play in the Premier League, then you may have a situation where the world champion is not in the PL. But I think if Littler was to win the title, because it is possible, let's put it that way, this is the only tour he hasn't won on this year. He's won on every other tour he's played. So if he wins the world title and lifts that trophy, then he has to be in the Premier League. It's as simple as that.
And if he doesn't, even if he reaches the final, you think it would be for his best interest not to be in it?
Yes, I think that's the case. If he makes the final, that's an awful lot of money to start your professional career in February. Take January off, get yourself rested after what's been an incredibly tiring year for him. He's played a lot of darts. Go and have a holiday, spend some time with your family, do what you want, come back fresh in February, start your pro career at the age of 17. But for him to be in the Premier League, I feel he's got to win it.